Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel and to another speed build. Now if you watched my video from about a week ago now or a few days ago, I did a desert market in the plains, in the glittering dunes, in the DLC Eternity Isle, and this is such a big open space when you first come in, so I had to debate for a long time what to use this space for. But I actually decided to do a market, and then I kind of left the pathway where it was and said something's coming. I haven't built it yet, but you will be seeing it at some point, and that is this build. So I have decided on this second part to make a kind of treasure dig site. Now I've always wanted to do some sort of dig site in one of my builds, and in the valley there wasn't really a biome that fit really well with this. I did kind of attempt to do it in the glade at one point, but it just never really looked right. And once we got the DLC and I saw the biomes, I was debating between doing it in the jungle or doing it here. The jungle gave me more of a kind of Jurassic Park vibe, which I really love the idea of, but when I saw this open space in the plains, I thought a desert is such a good spot to find buried treasure, so that is what I went for. Now I started off the build by obviously continuing the same stone brick pathway that I had done previously in the market, just to keep it all continuing on and matching, and I kind of led this to all the different entrance and exit points in the biome. So the first thing I did in the build was set up where I wanted these different dig sites to be, and I wanted them to kind of be in their own little plot sections where you could kind of have it all fenced off and have it be its own kind of designated area. So I used some of the craftable ancient fence. Now this fence is really expensive to build. I didn't realize how much rope it took to make these fences. So if you are low on like fiber or rope or anything like that, you could definitely use different types of fences. Trellis would work really well. The new DLC trellis would look great, but just so you know in advance, this fence is expensive to craft, so I had to use it very sparingly in here. For lighting in here, I went for the craftable lanterns, and I obviously do go in later and add more lighting, but I wanted to kind of start off by putting everything down in the biome so I knew exactly what I had to use. Now in the dig sites, I wanted it to look like the area had been dug. However, when you obviously dig manual holes in this game, they do naturally fill in over time. So I did kind of test it out and saw how long they lasted previously, and it just the holes were filled in within like a few days, and I was like, I can't be coming back here to dig the holes out again every so often. So I actually decided to craft a bunch of planters that come with the base game. Obviously usually you build these plain planters and then you edit them again to add in whatever flowers you're wanting to be in the planter, but I actually thought if I leave the planters completely plain, they just look like open sort of dig sites or dig areas for people, so I decided to place those in between all the fences before I went in and added a bunch of tents. Now apologies for the lighting change, I did realise it was getting really dark for me to be able to see, so I did change it back to daytime just so you can see a bit clearer, but I did place out everything that I had crafted that I wanted to utilise in the build and put it just in this spare section before I started rearranging everything. Now, as well as the dig sites, I obviously included a bunch of tents to make it look like whoever's digging out here would obviously be staying here in the different tents. So those are just craftable from the DLC. And I also crafted another one of the kind of market stalls, and I decided to utilize this as an area to place all of the things they may have dug up and all the treasures they may have found. And this would be kind of an area for them to put it all on display so that they could then go on and do whatever they wanted to do with them. Now, once I kind of had dispersed all the different items I had laid out, I started to rearrange everything to where I wanted it to be. Now, next to this black tent, there was this big open space, and that was where I decided I wanted there to be a campsite. But before I went and did that, I went around and placed my favourite item in my builds. Obviously, a lot of melted candles. If you watch any of my builds, you know melted candles go everywhere. They're perfect in every build. So I placed a lot of those, so that brought a lot more light to the area. Next to the tent, I ended up putting a crafting table just because I feel like it fit the vibe of the biome. It's always good to have a crafting table in at least one of the biomes, I find, because I can use them when I need them. But it also just fit this kind of dig site because it looks like a station where they may dust off the things that they've dug up and found. I then went in and started placing in some foliage and some trees just to kind of fill in these gaps around the back so I could see how much space I needed to rearrange things. But I started placing in a bunch of cacti and some of the desert trees into these gaps. Now, back in this back section by kind of like the sandy water, I did place a telescope, and I do decorate around this eventually, but I thought this would be such a cute spot to have a little telescope as it really fit the kind of dig site theme and just was a nice little addition to this little spot where I wasn't really sure what to put there because it is such a small area. Now with this build, I will say majority of everything I use for this build is craftable or is a collectible resource. I barely used any Scrooge items in this build. I think there was like 1 or 2 in the end. When I go through it at the end, I'll say what was Scrooge and what was not. But if you are someone who doesn't have a lot from Scrooges, but you obviously can craft a lot of stuff, this build is literally packed full of craftable items. I wanted it to be as natural as possible, and the craftable items we have from both the DLC and the base game worked perfectly for the build. Now the final touch of the build was to go in and add our goodies and treasures. So I added in a bunch of different collectible items. So I added in gems, soil. I also used the bones that we get from digging up into the desert. These were perfect in this build. So I placed a bunch of those around. The gems I included on the stools and in the kind of little table display. And as well as that, I added in a campfire and a few other bits and bobs around. I forgot that we had this purchasable sort of like animal skeleton from the Sunlit Plateau with the kind of Lion King theme. So I did place this around, and I actually realized you can clip this into the plant beds, so it looks like the bones are in the plant bed and they're kind of being uncovered, which was such a lovely touch. I didn't realize that this was possible, so I feel like that really elevated how it looked. So this is the final build I will walk you through. When we come in, we obviously have some fountains, and then we have a bunch of barrels and sort of plants to lead us in. We then have on the left the car with the campfire, and on the right we have our first little small dig site, and it has the kind of clipped in animal bones, which I think look great. We then have our first of our two bigger dig sites. Obviously this one has a bunch of bones around, and then the table in the middle with all the gems and treasures they've uncovered. Heading back to the campsite, we obviously have the benches in the middle to kind of have people sit on, and the crafting table next to the tents where they would obviously stay in. On the next big dig site, I did include some treasures on the crate at the back just to kind of show what they'd uncovered. And on the left we have this little craftable outhouse and just some rock pathing to lead to the exit to the oasis. There's also another rock path on the right to lead to the mining spot, and a rock path to lead to the little telescope spot, which I think was such a cute touch. So it kind of filled this small space. And on the right we have the final part, which is our kind of tent of treasures. I've actually included the kind of, I don't know what it's called, like the hologram station from the actual DLC storyline here, but I think it all just tied in really well and looked like people had kind of uncovered the things in there. So these are the final shots of the area. Now I obviously made it sunset, the perfect time in the desert in my opinion, to kind of show off the overall look. This area was quite a big space. It wasn't as big as the market I'd done previously, so it didn't take me as long, but it did take me some time to figure out how I wanted to rearrange everything, to kind of gather all the craftables I needed and all the resources I needed. But as I said earlier on in the video, pretty much everything in this build is craftable. The only things that aren't, that I can think of off the top of my head, is the hologram machine that you obviously get with the DLC, which you'd have access to regardless if you have the DLC, and also the telescope by the water. So if you don't have that telescope, you could definitely use something else in this spot, but everything else in here is craftable. Obviously it does take a lot of resources and it takes some grind to get there, but it is doable. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I have now finished this huge section in the desert. I actually have one more section left in my desert to do, so at some point I will be doing that, but I'm waiting for a particular item to come into the game that I can do this build with, so it'll have to wait for now. But I hope you guys enjoyed and you like the dig site. Let me know down below your thoughts and opinions, and if there's anything else you'd like to see me do in the desert before I complete it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a lovely week. Bye.